How you guys feeling today?
Yeah.
Out here at Hall of Flowers, it's a beautiful day. The sun is shining. I'm up here with some brilliant minds, and I'm sure there's some brilliant minds in the audience. So this year, Hall of Flowers put a real focus on innovation and expanding your brand into new markets, right? And so today, you often hear a lot of people say your network is your net worth, but what does that mean to your business, right? And for us here at the Equity Trade Network and the Equity Trade Certification, we believe that like who you work with is just as important as like the path that you take, right? And what you're working towards. And sometimes what you're working towards also dictates who you work with, right? And so for us, um, defining that is is very intentional, right? We are intentional about who we work with because again, we're trying to build an ecosystem in a community that builds a new industry. I have a hard time saying industry because for us, we were legacy and we were a community before we were in industry. And so we're talking about innovation. Normally, Dustin, you said this earlier, you think about technological advances, right? People say the word innovation, and that's normally what comes straight to mind. But today we're kind of talking about personal and human innovation and like innovative and creative relationships and partnerships. And that's what we mean by like your network being your net worth because if you're very intentional about those partnerships and they're organic and you're flowing that the right way, then it ends up building your actual net worth, right? So today again, he introduced me well. Ramon Garcia, Equity Trade Network, Sanctuary Farms. I have June Lee, the CEO and innovative mind behind NABIS and NABIS HQ. And we have Dustin Moore, innovative mind behind Embarc Events and Embarc Stores, CEOs in their own way, if you need titles. My title is I'm a cultural protagonist, so anything I do, I'm gonna make sure culture is relevant in it. So definitely start with you, June. I'll introduce a little bit about yourself, but I'd like to ask, like, how has the theme of innovation helped keep your business ahead thus far, and what's been a turbulent and like industry full of pitfalls and U-turns and surrounding? And what challenges have you encountered that push your greatest innovations to date?
For sure. Mic check, real quick. Hey, my name is Jun Lee. I'm one of the co-founders and co-CEOs at NABIS. And innovation's been a key theme for the company for as long as I remember. And I think, as you pointed out, there's kind of two types of innovations that we're talking about: innovation in the classic sense, like technological advancements, and then innovation, kind of human innovation, and partners and the different creative partnerships that we do. Um, I think at NABIS, innovation's always been about survival to a certain extent. This industry moves fast, but it's also extremely unforgiving, as you guys all know. And yeah, I mean, the reason why we had to innovate a lot of times was because we were hitting a wall with certain things. To give you an example, NABIS Marketplace is a
Good
marketplace
afternoon,
where.
Hall of Flowers,
Oh,
the official Grown Women Good
I'll,
Weed meet and greet
all
is
right,
happening
I'll
right
continue.
now until
Yeah,
2
Navis
p.m.
Marketplace is a
at
place where retailers can,
conveniently
place
located
orders. It
number
works kind of like,
011.
Amazon or eBay and so forth. But the reason why we built it wasn't necessarily because we had this grand vision of how the supply chain is supposed to work. It was simply because it was getting really, really difficult and frankly annoying to track thousands of orders on spreadsheets with hundreds of brands and hundreds of retailers. So in some ways, those kind of challenges, I think, lead to innovation. And margins are tight, capital is also lacking, and just to kind of give another example of an innovative partnership that we have with Embarc, actually. Um, so Embarc has over 20 stores. They're receiving products from hundreds of brands into their stores. And obviously, Nabis is a distributor. We have a lot of brands in our warehouses, and our job is to ship the products to the retailers. And it kind of occurred to us, hey, like, we're actually doing a lot of duplicative work by moving products from our warehouse to all 29 of their dispensaries, and asking all these brands to come deliver, would it potentially reduce the system cost of all of this, and potentially help the industry if we could centralize some of that activity and do the intake in a single place and disseminate the products out to the stores. And I mean, these are kind of technical examples, but when constraints are tight and money is tight, I think you're forced to innovate. And I think that in those times you identify good partners that you can kind of bring a systematic change to. And that's kind of been the theme of our innovation and growth at Navis.
Yes, and on that theme, Dustin, to relate, since he brought up that innovation, like how did those partnerships develop? Like for us, it's very intentional. We look out for equity trade, like the partnerships with you guys with Navis has helped our small businesses kind of expand in a way that ideally, if we were forced to do that ourselves, we don't have that type of capacity in capitalism, capital, you know, basically worked up capital to be able to compete on that level. But how have those partnerships developed, and like how has that helped expand innovation within your business or within your structures?
I mean, it's a novel concept, but I mean, specialization for us has sparked innovation. Embarc started as an agnostic retailer. Our promise to the consumer is that we would bring the best cannabis that California had to offer. We didn't really see the need to own the entire supply chain. We're intentional day one. We saw a problem in the market where the majority of the cities and counties in California did not allow for retail cannabis. So we took that fight community by community and opened these doors painstakingly, city by city, county by county, brick by brick. That's our unique ability. That's where we spend our time. I would say that because of that specialization, as June pointed out, it presented the need for innovation, and for us to stay in our lane as an exceptional retailer required partners like June, and separate and apart, Ramon and the Equity Trade Network, and Nina and the entire team, to help populate our shelves with the best possible products and to get those to our stores timely. So by again, going back to what Ramon said, it's really more about who before what. Realizing that these relationships, run deeper than our business. And I think that's something, even just taking a step back for this industry. Pre-legalization, it was about relationships. It was about, these were not transactions. This was about, building relationships where it wasn't zero sum. And unfortunately, I think post-legalization, given all the influx and instability, created a number of situations where folks were figuring out what can I get from that person rather than what can I bring to them. And I think, by leading with what value can I add, and starting with that as the proposition, it builds, synergies like we have today that come full circle, and things like, the State Fair Cannabis Awards, where the three of us have teamed up. June has aggregated the entire supply chain, helping through the competition. We bring some of the best products that California has to offer through Equity Trade Network, and that all happened without, there's intentionality in this relationship, but that outcome of where we were going, that all happened organically. So I think, again, the analog definition of innovation being that these relationships are innovative, and not necessarily even thinking through the lens of the technology, system, and process, which also obviously comes, but starting with pure intentions and actually trying to figure out how can I add value to my partner has been really helpful.
And for us, at the Equity Trade Network, we've been fighting barriers to entry, right? And that could be internal as well within your own business. You set up certain barriers, and you don't recognize that's limiting certain people from being able to participate. But what it's also doing, it's limiting your market. It's limiting how many partners that you have in your own business and its growth. And since you brought up the state fair, I wanted to touch a little bit deeper, because we've been innovating and creating spaces through with you guys with Embarc and Embarc events through Outside Lands, the state fair, and other events, including Hall of Flowers as our partner here. We've had innovative, creative relationships with blockchain tech apps like Verify and folks like Puffco, and of course NABIS. Talk about the challenges that like innovating events and like doing sales and consumption and events, and how that, like, for me, I saw that that was really a thing that brought us all together because we all love music, weed, and food, good food, and that innovated kind of these relationships as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to begin on the challenges of events. You guys, without getting into how the sausage is made, but I mean, it's very hard. The regulations that we all
Yeah.
have to abide by for a consumer to show up to an event like an Outside Lands, Bottle Rock, Cali Roots, State Fair, and maybe X Games this year. But so all of those things are really really challenging for us. And again, specialization. We've really worked on the policy side, working on the frameworks to allow for these sales and consumption events to happen, working with promoter partners, et cetera. Then you get on kind of the licensed supply chain side and trying to figure out, okay, how do we get all of these brands that have never, some have done events, but certainly many have never done, sales and consumption events, and understanding how do they participate in a compliant manner. And that's something that Ramon and Nina and the team have done an exceptional job of creating a process by which we can onboard folks and it can be meaningful for them and to democratize costs. And then, June on the supply chain side, that's, we're taking product from all over the state, having to get them on site. And then once the event's done, we have to move it backwards in the supply chain, which can only be done at events. And it's really taken, like, none of us could do that independently. Like, there's just not a chance. We wouldn't be successful without these partners here. And, it really did come through adversity. The first Outside Lands that we did collectively, I mean, we all lost money. I mean, candidly, but there was a perseverance and a vision. So again, as we think about this notion of, getting the right people on the bus and then deciding where you're going to go, we were able to do that year one, and we all had this collective vision of being able to take cannabis to the masses. And, we've kept our heads down. And because we've all approached one another with, how can we add value to the other and not what can I get from you? It's allowed this to go on. I think we're on year 5 this year for Outside Lands. So, that's been a testament to why your network really is your net worth in this space. Because again, without these folks, Embarc wouldn't be what it is.
And for you, June, like that created a supply chain problem, and even with like DCC coming in day of, I think Hall of Flowers Santa Rosa, and they're like, no, you can't do this. Like, how has that helped you or challenged you?
Yeah. I mean, Dustin kind of pointed out it takes a village to make these events work, and a lot of times the economics don't make a lot of sense. And I think Dustin kind of pointed to that. A lot of times when we first go into these ventures, the point is not to make money. In fact, a lot of times, it's at a loss. But I think so. The most important thing in these partnership is a shared vision. Why do we do this? And I think if ultimately the three of us and the broader team believe in this like larger vision that there's a certain form of cannabis consumption that's the default in California now, which is walking into the dispensary, buying the product, and taking it home. But that there could be a different channel that perhaps the highest concentration of cannabis consumption may happen from these musical events or state fairs and other events where people gather. And there's an element about cannabis that really can't be separated from community and the social interactions that you have. So with that shared vision, I think the folks come together, and it's much easier to obviously it requires me and Dustin to build a rapport, me and Ramon to build a rapport, but it's much easier to do that when there's a shared vision that is stated and we all agree upon. Yeah, and for example, Hall of Flowers, we've been doing their supply chain sample distribution here for the past 6 years. We do it for free. It's not something that we'd like to, and there's pushback and challenges from my team, from the shareholders and the board. Like, why are we doing all these things that are like not having an immediate return? And perhaps it looks compassionate and like it's a charity in the short term, but I truly believe that. And I think our broader team does too, that it's creating long-term value, and in the long run that it will pay off in some ways that we can't, fully visualize at the moment.
And for you, June, because this is specific, because we're talking about here at Hall of Flowers and these innovative relationships and how we put it together. You guys have been able to expand into Nevada and New York, and how has that experience and those relations help you kind of expand into new markets?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, NABIS is operating in 3 states now. California is our stronghold and our primary line of business. We have the same model as California and New York now. We've been up and running for about a year. And Nevada, we ended up acquiring a small company called Blackbird. That's a distributor that's well respected in the space last year. Um, I mean, to your point about your network is your net worth. Really, the value that we bring when we manage these larger these distribution outside of California. I mean, there's some perks to it, right? We're doing the same thing in a different state, so we have the team for it, the processes for it, and we generally understand the cost structure, so it makes sense for us to go into the state. But beyond that, perhaps more interesting is the fact that we have these deep-rooted, long relationships with respectable brands in California. And our vision or our hope is that we provide a railway for for these brands to access the other markets in a way that's a little bit more accessible and lower barrier to entry. Because if you're going to New York, you have to find your suppliers, your manufacturers. You then have to build your retail relationships. It's a very daunting task for an independent brand. And also for social equity. So it's I think that beyond just kind of expanding and growing enterprise value and whatnot, we sense a big sense of responsibility to make sure that we provide that bridge to the other markets. And 3 markets isn't all that interesting, but maybe in a couple of years it'll be 5 and 10 and 12, and now there's half the states they're legal. So that's really exciting. And the last thing I'll say about social equity too is we've had this partnership with Ramon for I want to say about 5 years now, and it's been going really well. And at NABIS, we have a special program that offers kind of a discount of preferential pricing for brands that are part of the social equity community. And again, this is people are like, oh, is that just charity? And it's absolutely not. I mean, there's a systemic issues that prevent smaller brands from accessing the market in a financially viable way currently. But that's not to say that there isn't demand for social equity brands in the state. So by us kind of tailoring a specific program, we're simply just connecting the demand that already exists for these beautiful brands in social equity and just kind of playing our part so that the whole system wins.
And I want to jump off on that really quick because I think you tied a nice bow around the fact that this is not charity by any means. And in fact, the value that this brings to our business, the demand that we see from our consumers, because again, going back to the foundation of Embarc, which is community craft culture, and we look at, bringing the best cannabis that California has to offer, these are the best brands that are produced in California. These are craft brands. These are legacy brands. These are brands that have been doing way before you put the caution sticker on the on the package. And I will say that our consumers, really appreciate that. And at the end of the day, it hits our bottom line in a favorable way. But at the same time, for us, when we think about our limited resources and the ability to, aggregate brands and to work with individual producers and individual brands and individual distributors, it's just too much. And that's, about solving a need. And, Ramon and Nina and the whole team saying, hey, there's a problem here. How can we add value to these partners? And to be able to pool resources alongside of NABIS, so NABIS can manage the 3PL, Ramon and Nina and team can manage sales, back office, and we can provide the shelf space that, is so important to create this ecosystem. That all happened organically. That wasn't something that we woke up one day and was like, okay, how am I going to, increase my bottom line by selling social equity brands? That wasn't at all. I will say the catalyst in all of this was the Equity Trade Network coming, sitting down with myself, Ivy, and the team and saying, hey, here's what we're working on. And the light bulb went on completely went on for us. And then, since that time, we've never looked back. And, when you look at Embarc's success and growth in communities by continuing to keep the promise of bringing the best cannabis, to the consumer, that is because of this partnership. So I think, a lot of the times people say, well, this seems complicated. Is this going to actually work? All of the reasons why something can't be beneficial and thinking about what am I going to get from it, that's just that paradigm in and of itself, throw that away. And that's been something that, really has helped us excel. And there was not, we had conviction coming out of the gate on that shared vision.
No, and that's it. You took the question out of my mouth because ultimately, we all see the sign of the times right now, and there's been an attack on small business, period, right? On individual small businesses, and so we have to become creative in creating pathways for small businesses to stay to exist, because these legacy farmers, a lot of these social equity applicants that were doing business before it was legal, like this was a way for their small business for them to pay rent. Like they weren't looking to be billionaires, they wanted to be able to pay their taxes and move on. And so like there this attack on small, like more consolidation over like creating pathways for small businesses. That's what I've appreciated about both of these relationships, is you guys intentionally went into it understanding, sitting down at the table, finding out what challenges we have and how you guys had resources to fit that, what challenges you have and how can we bear some of the weight of that and then come together and like do that. How is that commitment to small business help grow your business?
Yeah, I mean, great question, and it's an interesting one because consolidation has its merits. Don't get me wrong. There is purpose to consolidating some of the cost centers, the logistical costs, things that just make sense when they're with economies of scale. But that being said, I think a consolidated market is just far less interesting and fun in many ways, and I'll give you an example. If you walk into a liquor store in Rhode Island, you'll see some of the household brands for each category for whiskey and for vodka. Maybe you see Grey Goose in the vodka aisle and Johnny Walker in the whiskey side of things. And you do the same thing in, let's say, Texas, a couple thousand miles away,
Right.
and you see the same brands, right?
Right.
And when was really the last time we saw great innovation come from that space? Sure, there's another celebrity sticking a logo on and so forth, but kind of a counterexample to that is like I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Japanese candies, but if you go to the Japanese candy aisle, it's a much more a perfectly competitive market. There are new flavors launching every season, new SKUs, new people entering into the space, and really what that benefits is the end consumer. And that fair competition really bubbles up the best talent and the best innovation of that year to the marketplace. And I think that it's a delicate balance that we need to get, is like how do we encourage optimization through consolidation, but without really tarnishing the benefits that we get from having a much more competitive and open market. And I think that the most important thing is that we have players that are leading charge and making sure that that remains the case.
And that really kind of, you know, I want folks to look at this because I'm a distributor. When I started this out, I started, you know, on the legacy market before it was a market, but then legally, I'm a distributor, and my focus was to focus specifically on smaller businesses, legacy brands, and equity brands, because I wanted to make sure and keep the culture in like the legacy and the history of what California has done in the cannabis space. We've been creating the culture around this for a long time, and I understood that with democratizing anything, commoditizing anything, that there comes those barriers. And so, for me, like to work with another distributor, right? Like, who would have thought that everybody else looks at business and they think that of this as like a competition, but I understood there was things that they could do that I couldn't do, and there's things that I could do that they can't do, and if we put it together, we like we're able to capture a better like representation of what the community looks like, a more diverse market than you would if it was just limited by what capital you have or how much volume you're moving. And it was the same thing with you. In your retail, you guys made that of an intentional part of how you train your staff, how you open new stores, you know what I mean? And like how has that diversity helped your retail locations? Have you seen that benefited? Um,
So I think what I'm taking away from this, and I subscribe to this, is that consolidation does not mean commoditization. So I would say that, June has done a good job of consolidating distribution in a way that doesn't commoditize. It's not about, taking over somebody's cap table or oppressing a business. I would say the same is true for Equity Trade Network. It's consolidated a number of disparate brands to share resources to provide diversity in products under a common goal and shared costs. And for us, what that's meant is that we have diversity on our shelves that I think is unparalleled in many other shops. So what that means for us is that we have a unique selling proposition at Embarc where you can show up to our store and you can find products that you can't find anywhere else. And that's something that differentiates our experience. That's something that differentiates our culture. That's something that our guides, our bud tenders are so proud to be a part of. So, as Ramon was sharing when we do our new store opening process, this is embedded in our training, and we lead with that. I'm going to butcher the name of this product, but yesterday, so our sales manager from San Bruno and her godmother have partnered up, and they have created a product that you can smoke around your family around Thanksgiving, and it has no smell. Hush Puppies. Okay, so Hush Puppies. So shout out to Hush Puppies. So this product, they've worked with, a scientist that's distilled out the terpenes that create, for the purists, this isn't for you, but if it's Thanksgiving and you've got a crazy uncle and you don't want to hear about it, you can smoke one of these joints and nobody's going to know that you did. And that's something that's true innovation that came out of the Equity Trade Network ecosystem, and you're not going to find that anywhere else. So that's, case in point, why this is important. And again, starting from a place of not trying to figure out, like, what am I getting from you? This all has happened truly organically with a shared vision for an industry that was here long before any of us. This was about, channeling those great producers that, again, had come before us and figuring out a way to efficiently get those products to a consumer. And to your question, how does that help our business? We're seeing success in our stores, and it's because of those partnerships.
Especially in this crazy environment where you're seeing a lot of people that came in with hundreds of millions of dollars and they're running scared from the California market. For me, advocacy and patients' access and equalization of failed policies has always been the forefront of us being able to legalize and this industry from the start. How do you guys see those relationships forging a unified supply chain in continuing to advocate for a healthy and diverse industry? And then, what are the top challenges right now that you think some collaborative, innovative partnerships or advocacy could address?
Well, we're doing it right now. So the California Cannabis Operators Association was founded out of a rally cry last year when I think, we as the licensed industry saw a whole new rail of consumption happening in California, intoxicating hemp. And this is not to disparage intoxicating hemp, but at the same time, we've created a system in California that cannot support that at this moment in time. And, we all have to adhere to very strict testing regulations and compliance regulations, and we want everybody to be held to the same standard. So last year when AB 2223, which would have banned intoxicating hemp, failed, we pooled our resources together as an industry with these same partnerships and advocated to the governor's office and got an emergency ban on intoxicating hemp products. That has just been extended, and we believe that this year intoxicating hemp will be eradicated from the state of California. In addition, we're all facing down the barrel of a 19% excise tax. So 400 basis points is something that none of us can share. So, these partnerships in commerce have resulted in, an operators association that is fighting in Sacramento, again, by democratizing resources rather than each one of us individually having to hire a lobbyist and each one of us having disparate conversation with legislators and regulators. We have a unified voice and vision, just like we do in commerce, to stand in front of our regulators and share with them our challenges. And I'm very optimistic that because of these commercial relationships and this network, that we are actually going to impact policy this year in a very meaningful way. So I think this commercial relationship has actually stemmed into a political movement that is really seeking to, make not just incremental change, but meaningful change in, the rules that we all have to live by.
Yeah, I'll just add that NABIS is a proud member of COCOA and something that we support. I think, I think Dustin touched on a really important point. I think we're definitely kind of entering this like mid-game, so to speak, for the post-legalization growth and commercialization of cannabis. And it's not that there were no other trade organizations prior to this. There's CCIA, CDA, the California Manufacturing Association, USSP. I mean, but in many ways, they were riddled with some of the issues that were the primary focus kind of in the earlier games, the passives, Prop 64. And I think the fact that Dustin kind of rallied the industry to really address the commercial matters that really affect us the most right now, kind of devoid of, in some ways, some other political agenda, I think is a really, really a good move. And we're happy to support. And ideally, we're really hopeful that the industry can really come together, put forth a platform that Sacramento can support, and really drive meaningful change in the industry for the actual players that are operating in the space.
And you guys are all like advocates and voices for this because none of us, whether you're a brand manufacturer, distributor, or ancillary business, can shoulder another 4 or really what turns out to be an 8% increase to the consumer, raising taxes right now. And so we need all of you guys to be advocates in your communities. On March 24th, next Monday, those who can will be in Sacramento rallying and demanding that we get a freeze to that excise tax increase at the very least. We need all of you guys to be a part of that, voicing that, making sure that you're sending some messages to your representatives, or you're showing up and screaming loud, because without that, they need to hear from us. They think that we're fractioned as an industry. They think that we're all coming with the different expectations. But I think that through all of this, we have all these challenges, we've become more unified and more focused on how this supply chain, and really to what we're talking about, this is the one industry where from seed to sale, we can support each other's successes. We can help make sure that each other doesn't fail, and it doesn't take any shine away from our individual successes. And so we need everybody to gang back together like the community that we are, and push that and support that and let them know we're not as fractioned as they think we are.
And it's impossible to overstate or emphasize this enough. This excise tax issue is a very important one. If you don't care about it, you should, because this industry is hanging, is standing on a knife, balancing, and a 4 basis point or 8 basis point, extraction of margin is going to be devastating for a lot of players, and it's going to cause a major extinction event for a lot of the operators. So if you're in the industry, even if you're not a retailer subject to the excise tax, this matters, and please do care about it and support us when we can.
I wanted to make sure and emphasize some stuff that's serious, but I'd also like to, kind of filter out our conversation into some creative and critical thinking. So if you weren't restricted by current regulations in this, what would you add to the industry? And like, what should we look out for from you guys next?
Oh, man. If we weren't limited by regulations, I think
What would you
the
add?
sky's the limit. But I mean, from our perspective, I think the most obvious one is some degree of interstate commerce. A lot of the problems that are plaguing the industry right now come from the fact that these markets are operating independently. It just doesn't make sense to grow weed in New York when there's all this sun in California, for example. And I think that would just be a big boon in the industry. I know it's kind of a long target for us to dream, but that's one. I mean, the other is, I think, more going back to the topic of events. I think that there's a lot of onerous regulations put on events right now for cannabis consumption. You will not go to a music festival in California and not see alcohol. You won't ever see the bouncers not confiscating alcohol so they can sell you the booze inside. And it's just so puzzling to me how difficult it is to really navigate this. And I think the access can be made not just more broadly, but just made easier for people to participate. I mean, we have these. California is a big hub and a powerhouse for events. Some of the best event production companies, some of the best musical festivals with the highest attendance all happen here, and it just seems like a really big missed opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I think cannabis would be integrated in society just like alcohol. It would be integrated where, cities are not banning dispensaries. We would have, access. We'd have 4,000 dispensaries in California because that would stamp out, the unlicensed activity. We would have the ability, to go to a sporting event and right next to the beer cart, get your infused beverage or I think it's just what's happened with regulation is this has been treated as punishment and not partnership. I mean, we've talked a lot about that. I think our regulators, they do mean well. I believe that. Somebody that understands policy and policy development, I think they have pure intentions, but they don't operate our businesses every day. They don't understand the implications of having to install $200,000 of infrastructure to execute a cannabis event that renders that event unviable. And I think if there was a way for us, again, to be unified in our voice, they'll hear us. The biggest complaint that we receive when we're in Sacramento and talking to legislators is like, I've heard 6 other of your colleagues come into my office today and you all say different things. So, that's why the California Cannabis Operators Association was formed, was really to channel a unified voice on a handful of set of facts that we can agree on. And this year, again, the 2 biggest things that we have to ensure happen is that we have a level playing field when it comes to intoxicating hemp, and that we have a taxation structure that does not kill our industry. And without those 2 things, we may not be having a conversation next year. So to Ramon's point, and to June's point, this, whether or not you're a retailer, whether or not you're a brand, if you're ancillary, this industry won't exist if we can't come together on those topics. But sky's the limit on what a world would look like post regulation, and I can't wait for it.
And you kind of talked about what I think you said something earlier about something that we should look for, a new event after State Fair.
So this year, really kind of for me, it's hard to even believe as a kid who watched the X Games growing up. But don't be surprised if you see cannabis sales and consumption this year at the X Games in Sacramento in August. So please do come see it. It's going to be pretty awesome.
And so. Just to kind of close out the Equity Trade Network, make sure and check out our Legacy Market booth over there. There's 15 different brands that were all operators before this was legal, participated in some way before this was legal, and are still here participating in this turbulent environment. So make sure you support all of our brand partners, and thank you, Hall of Flowers, for...
In all seriousness, if you are a retailer, go to the Equity Trade Network booth. Take some time, change your mindset on what your buying practices are. Think about who your consumer is, and I can promise you from personal experience across our fleet of stores that those products have lifted not only our top-line sales, but our average basket, and we actually have a stickier customer who does care about craft, who does care about legacy. So I would really just, whatever you do, whether you take my word for it or not, you can talk to our team, and they can show you the financial results of what that looks like, and it's the truth.
And for you, June, NABIS is always on the forefront of innovation and like looking at things in a different way and creating easier supply chain solutions. What are we looking for from you guys
in the future? Yeah, I'd love to hear that from Dustin as well, what we can see or expect from you guys in the future. But I think for this year, for NABIS, the focus is on retailers. How do we really improve their experience? How do we reduce their costs? How can we maybe reduce the number of days the inventories, at the retailers, so that we can free up more working capital for the industry? So I think the thing to look out for is NABIS Central, our central distribution product and offering for the retailers. POS integrations and VMI, automatic ordering, things like that. There's a lot coming down the pipeline from our tech team right now, so watch out for that.
And I just got to say, from the moment I saw you guys' marketplace and the way you innovated that, I had been working in the distro space for a long time, trying to pull together different partners to actually create a unified menu and innovative ways for people to do that, and like a centralized accounting way of getting, because retailers, you might have 5,000-6,000 SKUs, deal with 20 different distributors. For you to ask one accounting person to keep track of that and invoice is very hard. And so the innovation that you guys have created has made it easier on both sides of the supply chain to be able to do that. And so I appreciate those partnerships. I appreciate you guys' partnership in doing that, because it's helped us expand our small brands into other areas that, for me to deliver some product to San Diego, that has to be a $7,000 order for me to cover my my gas and my driver and my insurance and maintenance. But like what retailer is ordering from one brand $7,000 worth of product, and so that has helped us kind of innovate it. And
Yeah.
so I want folks to think like that.
Yeah, and it's not just technological innovation. There's a human component to it too. I see, our team, Charlie and Randall here. We actually have staff to interact and build the relationships with the retailers directly. So if you're a retailer, I would encourage you to reach out to, or be receptive when reached out to by our team.
And on NABIS Central, I think feel free to talk to me about it. It was something that we really consternated about, is like how we're going to take our shelves and our supply chain and give it to one partner to fulfill. It's been exceptional. The fact that June and his team, Drew's here working closely with our supply chain team. I think he was actually working on some orders, just out in the audience. And I think what we've realized is that by letting those who are experts in their discipline going back to specialization, I owe you lunch, June, because I think you're going to drop like 7 figures to our bottom line this year, just in efficiencies of being able to not have 20 doors hitting our stores every single week, getting 1 to 2 orders, and then just the other efficiencies along the way. So from the technology integrations, Real ID, getting rid of stickering, looking at how we're able to actually become more efficient. And again, do what we do best, which is talk to people about the best cannabis in California and get into their hands. That's our job, and the rest of it, y'all are taken care of. And it's been, we've been doing this now for almost 6 months, I think. It took a while to kind of figure out the details, but the onboarding was really simple, and it was something that has just improved the efficiency of our business substantially. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. I think these innovative partnerships have helped us. I often tell people when people ask me what are the difference between some of our retail partners for our brands. For us and Embarc, I've watched our brands kind of grow in your stores, and I've watched you guys grow when other people have come in and had to shut down and fail. And so for me, this whole conversation was about having people kind of open up their thinking and think differently about these relationships and how they can help them individually grow. That main thing is what I think has made the difference between Embark stores, is that you guys do have the products that people have at other stores, but you have products that are unique to your store, and that's what creates that expanded market. That's what allows us to also step in there and provide unique. We, like you said before, we provide value to each other.
Yeah, I mean, like working with people like Lizzie Jeff and the Future Relics and Morris, and coming up with these insanely cool product collabs that then extend outside of the 4 walls of our retail into these community events. Like, this is stuff that it's grassroots, block and tackle marketing that it's really fun. And it's incredibly effective. We are in a very daunting space, and Terry and Courtney on our team here, they're the ones that really that lead with this. They just make us look good. But being able to take these what seem like intuitive concepts, but to simplify the process, to go from an ideation with Lizzie and Morris to our shelves, and to extend into these communities. Just having all of these teams truly feeling like one, going back, coming full circle back to your network being your net worth. We don't operate as disparate teams. We really do operate as kind of as a single unit, and that is something that you're talking about, kind of this middle step in cannabis maturation. It's almost like we're hearkening back to 96 to 2017, when it really did require community efforts, and it's inspiring to me to see, even on the advocacy efforts, that we're starting to see that. So I think the closer we pool together, the faster we're going to get out of this. Because at the end of the day, like the industry itself is not an enemy to itself. We have external forces that are coming after it. We saw it with intoxicating hemp. We saw it with some of the big moneyed players in alcohol and tobacco that are coming in and trying to fracture us, so they can come in and really just take over our market. And the best way to solve for that is to simply come together as an industry, and figure out how we can add value to one another, rather than to figure out what we can get from the other person.
Yep. Appreciate you guys. Definitely want to tell you guys to check out our booth. Check out the Coloring Cannabis podcast over there. We have some innovative conversations going on, and creating some new vision and visibility. And check us out. Ask about our Verify app. We have some innovative technology that we're launching here just to kind of get people used to it, but also it's some innovative ways of our brands getting directly to our consumers, some blockchain technology that will allow us to give out some free gifts, tickets, vacations, get some customer value points and some other exciting things. So definitely check us out. And I appreciate both you guys for your partnership first and foremost, and for coming up here and having this conversation with me.
Thank you, Ramon.
It's
Does
an honor.
anybody have any questions? I think we have a couple minutes. If anybody has a question, definitely come up and
Gentlemen?
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My question. Ow, that was the herb drum there. My question to you guys is, we talked about a lot of legacy brands, and which is awesome and something that I like to tout myself as being a legacy brand. We've been around. I founder of a brand called Americana, and we've been through pretty much every hurdle there is. We just lost our third distributor. So my question would be: is how are you guys? Have you guys thought about coming up with like a verification or like verified legacy brand? Like I would love to see that because I know that we've had sales reps trying to get in the doors of Embarc, and it's just like it's we can't get through, and it's like we're this legacy brand, we got killed last year, and we're just surviving on threads and it's like gosh, you have that. Yeah.
so we've worked on now to see if you see the equity trade certification. A lot of our legacy operators are also equity operators, so there's certain areas that do have social equity programs. There are other areas that do not have social equity programs. But by us being a federal certification mark, if you do show that you qualify for any city or county social equity program, you can give us that documentation. Then we can verify you as a certified social equity applicant and certified social equity brand. But how that relates also to legacy is also our Verify app that I just mentioned. It is a blockchain certifier. So one of our biggest problems was how do we verify that this is a social equity product, and how do we keep other people from just putting it on their label so that it retains that value? Well, through that blockchain technology, if it doesn't have that that NFC tag on it and you scan it and it doesn't say this is certified, then you are probably buying a knockoff from the sesh. And so definitely come talk to us and how we can plug you guys into that. We've been trying to expand that network more and plug folks into actually that, because we need folks to know that these are people that have sacrificed. These are people that know this plant, and you as a consumer better than anybody who's just looking at it for money. We care about the plant. I know you care about what you do, and you care about that response that the consumer needs to do that. So definitely.
We give back to veterans, we support first responders,
And I've seen that.
and
And we have
I'm a middle-aged white man.
it's
I'm not
it's
social equity.
exactly. And we also,
Fall into,
if you don't fall, we also have allyship program at which both of these partners have been allies to us and like committed us to resources to us and us resources to them, and how we work together. I think we have a bunch of legacy farms that are part of our equity trade network that are also allies. Is how we come together. It's how we do business together. It's who we do business with. We don't have to participate in this system the way everybody else does. We can, from seed to sale, support the people that we want to support, and we can make sure that we keep that an ecosystem that supports each other. So definitely tap in. Let's build more.
It's Adam, right? Hey, good to see you again. You mentioned distribution for a bit as well. So if you want to have a conversation, we can talk about how to best represent you guys as a legacy brand on our platform.
And that's helpful for us
Yeah.
because then that gets back to specialization and that pulls it in. So we're, it's kind of fitting into that ecosystem. And I look at partners like we have Chico's Best, in the house today, and some of the smaller legacy brands that we really do, support inside and outside the equity trade network. And it's hard to work with everybody. But what I will say is, we're very transparent about who our partners are in NABIS and equity trade, and it's, on the supply chain side, and as we think about intaking, et cetera, it's that streamlines for us. So it's it's our job to explain who our partners are and how that works. So hopefully that's helpful in
And we
getting
took
the ball
on a
push.
partnership too with Sun and Earth certification, another certification, and NABIS has provided those resources to all the Sun and Earth certified brands, and so it's how do we provide those same resources and create those pathways.
And I saw Judy somewhere out here with the 12 J's of Christmas, and I think we're going to have a different version of that for the state fair this year. So we've been thinking about Sun and Earth and those certified programs, and making sure that again, the best cannabis makes it to the consumers. That's our job.
I appreciate you guys. I hope you guys got something out of it. I know I did. I definitely appreciate these integrations. And come see us. Check out Embarc. Check out NABIS. Thank you, Hall of Flowers, and all our partners.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
you
you
all.
guys.